What would you do if your parents sold the one thing you worked years to afford and didn't even tell you until it was gone? I wasn't rich. That car meant everything to me. It was my escape, my independence, my reward after years of double shifts, skipped birthdays, and missed nights out. And they sold it without asking, just so my sister could have a perfect honeymoon. No apology, just a shrug. You'll understand one day, they said. But I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I simply disappeared from their lives and started building my own. What they didn't know? That one day my sister would walk into her dream job and I'd be the one behind the desk waiting to interview her. Before I tell you exactly how that happened, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, have you ever been betrayed by your own family? And did they ever regret it? Because what comes next isn't just revenge, it's reinvention. I wasn't born into privilege. Everything I owned, I earned. From the second I turned 16, I juggled school and 2 part-time jobs just to save a few dollars a week. While other kids got handed keys to brand new cars on their birthdays, I spent 4 years walking to work, riding buses in the rain, and missing out on late-night study groups because I had to clock in. But eventually, it paid off. That dusty red Honda Civic might not have looked like much to others, but to me, it was freedom. I paid for every oil change, every tank of gas, every insurance bill with my own hands. That car was my sanctuary, my symbol that I could do life on my own terms. Then one day, I came home from a long weekend trip and my car was gone. Not stolen, not towed, just gone. I stood in the driveway blinking like maybe I was imagining things. My mom, standing in the kitchen with a cup of tea, didn't even flinch when I asked where it was. "We sold it," she said, like it was no big deal. "Your sister needed help paying for the honeymoon. You don't mind, do you?" I stood there, frozen, the words bouncing around my head like a joke I didn't understand. My sister had just gotten married a month earlier. She had a Pinterest-perfect wedding, designer dress, a custom cake with edible pearls, and now, apparently my car helped pay for her romantic getaway to the Maldives. The worst part, they didn't even ask me. Not a phone call, not a text, nothing. My dad even chimed in with, "She's starting a new chapter. You're still young. You'll figure it out." That's when it hit me. I wasn't a daughter in their eyes. I was a backup plan, a financial convenience, the reliable one they could always count on to sacrifice. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just nodded, walked upstairs, and quietly began packing everything I owned. That night, while they slept, I drove off in a borrowed car from a friend, vowing to never be treated like a doormat again, and I meant it. What they didn't know was that I already had a plan. A quiet, calculated plan that would rewrite everything they thought they controlled. I didn't want revenge. I wanted power. And I knew exactly how to get it. The first few months after leaving felt like a free fall. I crashed on couches, worked odd hours, and barely scraped by. But the freedom, it was intoxicating. I didn't have to answer to anyone. No more silent expectations, no more being the backup plan. I started freelancing, copywriting at first, then some consulting. I said yes to everything, stayed up late watching tutorials, learning SEO, branding, marketing, anything that paid. And slowly, things started to shift. Clients referred friends. My work got noticed. A business began to form, not overnight, but with grit. What fueled me wasn't just ambition. It was the image of my sister posting beach photos while I took cold showers in a shared apartment. Her captions were dripping with captions like, "Living the dream," while I lived in survival mode. That memory hardened me. It sharpened my focus. I stopped making excuses. I built a small online boutique consultancy, helping creatives grow their brand presence. Within a year, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Then one day, while scrolling LinkedIn, her name popped up. My sister. She had just landed an internship, her dream stepping stone, at a wellness startup I knew all too well. I had a client who was an investor there, and they were looking to pivot, restructure, rebrand. The timing was divine. I reached out quietly, strategically. 2 weeks later, the investors signed off and handed me creative control of the brand. I didn't tell them I knew one of their new interns. I didn't say a word. Instead, I showed up on her third day of work, She was seated at a small desk, typing something, wearing a pastel blazer and trying hard to look confident. Her face went pale when she saw me. "You," she whispered. I smiled, not cruelly, just calm. "Nice to see you," I said. "I'll be sitting in on your progress meeting today." Her eyes darted toward the supervisor, who simply nodded and said, "Meet Clara. She's the new lead consultant on the rebrand." And just like that, I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I was the woman her future depended on. The room was quiet during that first meeting. My sister barely made eye contact, and I didn't force it. I wasn't there for a showdown. I was there to do my job and prove that I could succeed on my own terms. I went through my presentation without once acknowledging our history. Her supervisor and the team took notes, nodded and asked questions. Meanwhile, she sat stiffly in her seat, trying to hold it together. I could feel the tension in her shoulders, the way her pen kept clicking nervously. But I didn't flinch. I kept things professional. That was my power now. Silence, control, direction. Afterward, she caught up with me in the hallway. Her voice trembled. "Did you do this to humiliate me?" I tilted my head. "You think this is about you?" I paused. "I didn't ask to be here. Your employers hired me because I'm good at what I do." I let the weight of that settle. "Maybe you should focus on doing the same." She didn't respond, just stood there, stunned. And for the first time, I saw her uncertainty, something she had never shown growing up. I walked away before she could say more. But the truth? That moment did something to me. I wasn't proud or smug. I felt clarity. I wasn't the same girl who had been overlooked, silenced, and used. I had built something from ashes, and now I stood tall in rooms I was once locked out of. I wasn't playing small anymore. And I didn't owe apologies for how I got there. That week, I quietly informed the investors that one of the interns on the project had a family tie to me. They thanked me for the disclosure, but said it didn't change their trust. I earned that manipulation without shortcuts, just work. But that's when the next twist hit me. My parents called, both of them, together. They wanted to talk. They missed me, they said. "Let's put the past behind us." But what they really meant was they heard I was doing well, that I was someone now. And that terrified me more than any silence ever had, because I knew the storm wasn't over. It was just starting again. I didn't answer their first few calls. I wasn't ready after everything they'd done, after selling my car without even asking, after making me feel like I was just a tool for their convenience. They didn't get to just walk back into my life because things were going well for me, but curiosity got the better of me. On the third day, I picked up. My mom started with tears. "We're so sorry, sweetheart. We know we made a mistake." Then my dad chimed in, more reserved, like he was reading off a script. "You've grown into someone we're very proud of. We just want to reconnect." But nothing they said sounded real. It was like they were trying to rehearse a version of the past that didn't match my memory. Not once did they mention the car. Not once did they acknowledge how they picked favorites, how they chose my sister's happiness over my survival. I stayed quiet for a few seconds. Then I asked, "What changed?" My mom stuttered, "We just miss you." But the pause before her answer told me everything. They'd heard through my sister that I was now working closely with a top venture capital firm, that I was being considered for lead strategist on a campaign that would put our project in national headlines, that I was suddenly useful. I ended the call with a polite, "I'll think about it," but I already knew the answer. I wasn't letting them back in just because I had value now. They weren't sorry, and they were just scared I didn't need them anymore. A week later, I bumped into my sister in the office lounge. She looked exhausted. The glow of the honeymoon was gone. Reality had hit. Her job was hard, and she wasn't used to not being the favorite. She mumbled something about our parents trying to fix things. I smiled politely and walked away. I didn't owe her comfort, not anymore. Later that evening, I received an email from HR. There was an anonymous complaint filed about me, unprofessional behavior, favoritism, manipulation. It was vague, but serious enough to warrant a review. I knew who filed it. My sister was playing a dangerous game, one I was prepared for, because unlike her, I had already survived betrayal, and I wasn't afraid to face another battle. The HR meeting was scheduled for the next morning. I didn't panic. I gathered every report, every team evaluation, every time-stamped approval she'd signed under my leadership. I walked into that meeting with the same calm I had the day I signed the acquisition papers. This wasn't about defending myself. It was about showing the difference between emotion and fact, between entitled assumptions and earned respect. The HR rep didn't seem particularly concerned once I laid out the evidence. Honestly, she said, almost with a smile, we've seen how well your team functions under your lead. This just feels like someone struggling to adjust. I knew what she meant. My sister had always been handed things. This was the first time in her life she had to prove herself, and she hated every second of it. After the meeting, I got a ping from her on Slack. One sentence, "You always wanted to ruin me." I didn't reply. I let the silence speak for itself. Because that wasn't true. I never wanted to ruin her. I wanted her to see that actions had consequences, that being the favorite doesn't mean you're untouchable, that using people comes at a price. But what really surprised me came later that evening, an email from my mother. A real one this time, no apologies, just desperation. Your father and I are in trouble. Your sister's husband lost his job. We took out loans we can't pay. We thought she'd be supported at work. Please, we need help. You've always been the responsible one. It didn't even sting. Not anymore. They had reduced me to a safety net, a backup plan, the daughter who would save them because she had always done it before. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I closed the email, took a breath, and reminded myself of something simple but powerful. I had built this life with no shortcuts. Every step, every job, every sacrifice, no one could take that from me again. I didn't respond to my mother's email, not because I was bitter, but because I'd finally accepted the truth. They didn't see me as a daughter, they saw me as a resource. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to be the one who cleaned up their mess. The next morning, I walked into the office and noticed something had shifted. The team had caught wind of the drama. Of course they had. But instead of awkward silence or gossip, I was met with quiet respect. Even the employees who had been close to my sister started treating me differently. Maybe they finally understood that I wasn't just the boss's sister. I was the one who made this company thrive. Later that day, I scheduled a one-on-one with my sister. Not out of spite, out of necessity. She came in with her arms folded, eyes defiant, like she was still waiting for me to hand her an apology wrapped in a bow. I didn't offer one. Instead, I said, this position isn't a game. You wanted this job and now you have it, but you answer to the same standards everyone else does. If you can't meet them, we'll replace you. Not because you're my sister, because that's how business works. She didn't say a word, just glared, stood up, and walked out. That was the last conversation we had for weeks. But behind the scenes, I kept building. New contracts, better systems. I even started mentoring some of the junior staff. Everything my sister had dreamed of doing in this role, I was doing. Not to rub it in, just because I could, because I'd earned it. And deep down, I think she knew that. The silence between me and Natalie stretched on like a cold war. Every morning, she showed up late, dragging her feet, barely making eye contact. I kept everything professional. I reviewed her work just like everyone else's. I praised what was good. I flagged what wasn't. But it became clear she wasn't adjusting. She was resisting. One day, HR forwarded me an anonymous complaint. Natalie had allegedly belittled a junior team member during a presentation and later blamed her mistake on someone else. It was just one report, but it wasn't the first time I'd heard whispers. I scheduled another meeting. This time, she didn't come in defiant. She came in shaken. "Why are you doing this to me?" she asked, her voice breaking. I looked her in the eyes and replied, "I'm not doing anything to you. You asked for this job. You wanted the title, the desk, the respect. That comes with responsibility, Natalie. You don't get to wear the crown and dodge the weight." Tears welled up in her eyes, and for a split second, I felt that old tug, empathy, sisterhood, the part of me that still remembered being her biggest fan. But that version of me didn't exist anymore, not since she and our parents decided my hard work was disposable. I gave her a performance improvement plan. She had 30 days. If she didn't meet the standards, she'd be let go. The old me would have never had the guts to do that, but this me, the one who rebuilt her life from betrayal and turned it into a business, she knew what she was worth. And she wasn't about to let family guilt rewrite the rules of success. The 30 days ticked by slowly, each one bringing a mix of awkward tension and passive-aggressive silence between me and Natalie. The team knew something was off, but no one said it out loud. They respected me, and they feared her meltdowns. Her work didn't improve. If anything, it got worse. Missed deadlines, avoided meetings, snarky comments in group chats. It was as if she was daring me to fire her, as if proving I was cruel would make her the victim again. But I didn't flinch. When the final review meeting came, I sat across from her, calm and direct. I wanted this to work, I said, not for you, not for them, but because I believed you had potential. But this isn't working, Natalie, and you know it. She didn't argue, she just stared at me, eyes glassy. You were always the quiet one, she whispered, the boring one, the background girl, and now look at you. Didn't respond, I didn't need to. She packed her things and left. I stood at the window of my office and watched her walk out of the building, her dream job, her power fantasy, all of it slipping through her fingers, and I felt peace. Not revenge, not satisfaction, just peace. Because this wasn't about getting back at anyone anymore. It was about building something that no one could take away from me ever again. And I had done it. The day after Natalie left, the office felt lighter. Everyone moved with a bit more ease, conversations flowed more freely, and there was no tension lingering in the break room. I didn't realize how much of a shadow her presence had cast until it was gone. I walked through the office that morning with a quiet sense of power, not the kind that comes from stepping on others, but the kind that comes from reclaiming your voice after years of being ignored. A week later, my parents reached out. My mom called, her voice a mix of guilt and concern. Your sister's having a hard time, she said. She says you humiliated her. I didn't argue. I just replied she humiliated herself, for once. I didn't feel the need to justify or explain. I owed them nothing, not anymore. That same week, I bought myself a new car, not to replace the one they sold, but to symbolize how far I'd come. I paid for it in full, no help, no co-signers, no guilt. I even passed by Natalie's apartment that day, not to gloat, but to remember the girl I used to be, sitting in the passenger seat while everyone else drove her life. I no longer lived for their approval. I no longer chased scraps of love wrapped in manipulation. I had built my own life, my own company, my own peace. And no one, absolutely no one, could take that away from me again. And if you've ever been dismissed, underestimated, or sacrificed for someone else's convenience, I hope you know this: quiet strength always rises. You don't need to scream to win. You just need to keep building. Thanks for listening to my story. If this resonated with you, please hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need the reminder that revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just living well and letting them watch.